the country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you, councillors. I have no apologies. I have at this stage no acknowledgements. I would say at this stage that while we, in the technical sense, should be wearing a mask, and it's good to see some, I think for clarity of communication, I won't. And I would note that over the next few months, subject to the regulations, we need to move back to perhaps a normalised way we did things prior to the pandemic. We'll just have to see where the regulations go on that in terms of attendance at meetings and the like. I have a late item, councillors, that you should all have received a few hours ago, I believe. Can I have someone that move that the late item, that council accept the late item as tabled? And that's moved by councillor Yench and seconded by councillor Qualman. Is there any discussion around that? I will put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Now, item 2, councillors, confirmation of the minutes, including the confidential minutes held on the 19th of October 2021. Is there a mover that way, please? Councillor Qualman. And a seconder, if we may, please.
I have my hand up there.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to clean my glasses, councillors. I omitted to do that before I started. And councillor Rountree will be the seconder. Any discussion, councillors, around that at all? There being none, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Okay, adjourned items of business. Item 3, we have none. Item 4, minute action list. Any questions there, councillors, from the minute action list? Is there any questions from the minute action list, councillors? There being none.
Mr Mayor, sorry, just one thing.
Councillor Arthur, very quickly.
I see we've cancelled the workshop for 7th of December, and part of the plant and fleet asset management plan was to be presented in December. I would have thought that would have been perfect to go to a workshop before coming to a full council. There should, there should be quite a bit of discussion and on that. So I'm just wondering if
or to a committee meeting, works, roads. Looking at the director. The intent, councillor, it appears, is to take it to there is a December meeting of that committee, roads and infrastructure. You chair it.
10th.
Whenever it is in December. So that's the intention at this stage, it appears, rather than the workshop. Councillors are more than able to go to committee meetings even if they're not on the committee. Anything else, councillors? There being none, no one. The 7th is that committee meeting. 7th of the 12th is roads and infrastructure. There's no more minutes. I go to questions with notice. Councillor Ling, questions with notice. The first question, and councillors, I have spent some time. Councillor Ling has a creative language ability, but I have let the 3 questions go through at this stage. Councillor, I'd ask you to perhaps be a bit more polite sometimes in some of your words. But anyway, are you happy with the answer to the first question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would ask if the matter is going to be taken up to be investigated at a later stage, wouldn't it be more appropriate to have a CRM reference number assigned to it so it's not swept under the carpet and forgotten about again?
So through you, councillor, we don't sweep things under the carpet. Strictly speaking, it doesn't need a CRM because it's now in the public domain. We won't need a CRM. CRM won't remind me to do it.
Sure you'll keep us on our toes with that one, councillor.
Thank you.
Number 2, you've got a second one.
No, I think the other two were okay.
The third one you're also happy with in relation to recreational fishing grants.
Yes.
Okay, I move on to questions without notice. Councillor Bland.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering if it's possible for the CEO and appropriate staff to follow up with the authorities such as Dipti Police and Police, the issues surrounding a recent accident on Princess Highway coming from the south, just probably slightly north of the hospital. This is not the first high-speed accident that's happened there where the vehicles have gone through fences. To my knowledge, there has been at least 3, 2 of which have been reported to the police. I understand you can't legislate for behaviour. However, it would be very easy for someone to have been injured. This one happened just prior to 7 a.m. in the morning. And we are aware that that intersection at the hospital and Bowman Street is in fact on our list as well. So it is the rise and the curve that comes from that causes part of the problem. So whether or not there's barriers, but certainly some discussion with the appropriate authorities. It could have been a tragic incident in the end.
So your question is, can we do, and I think you've raised this with me before, I think we will follow up perhaps with DIT in particular, but the police around the safety of that area and whether further traffic guards or whatever might be. It's not like, as you said, it's not the first time there's been an accident there. So I think we will follow up. That's the way I read it.
So through you, Mayor, we'll write to those relevant authorities offering to work with them about options.
Okay. Are there any other questions without notice? Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple, please. Recently, I've had discussions with some people at Wellington East. There appears to be a level of confusion in regards to the development project. I'm wondering whether we would be able to put out a low-level information aspect to the people at Wellington East pertaining to Caravan Park, potentially, and also the business precinct development.
So through you, Mayor, we have met with we met with one resident on site with Councillor Yench, and we also have had one resident write directly to me. In both occasions, I've advised them that we've had no DA application for the caravan park, so there is nothing there happening at this moment. And those transactions can be tracked on the public portal, the planning portal. In regards to other activity there, there is an approval for some cabins that doesn't trigger public consultation. And the business approval, and Miles, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 2 years for the applicant to actually trigger that approval process and start the works, and we've had nothing to date. Is that correct still?
That's absolutely correct.
So we don't do isolated updates like that to the community, but we could put something in our next council update from the chambers. We might put something in there in the 3 actual newsletters that go around the district specifically for that. There is also concerns at that area around that fence and the gate. The fence we've attended to, the gate we're still looking into.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, CEO. That's appreciated. I think that's a decent way to do with it. My other question is, it was being raised to me by several ladies that the toilets in the town hall don't have handrail assist. And because I'm a bit loath to go into the ladies' toilets myself for a look, I was wondering whether if it could be looked at, and if it is required, we could look into putting those facilities in place.
So through you, Mayor, I don't know if there is or there isn't, but we will investigate and work out what's needed.
Thank you.
Questions without notice, Councillor Still? Okay, no more questions without notice. Move to item 6, reports by members. Councillors, the Mayor's report is the first. I might comment. I was very pleased to see, I think nearly 150 people attended the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra in our town hall here. That was not that I could attend for very long, but it was a magnificent achievement, particularly by Tammy and the community house in getting them here. And I hope they had a good day. And I think the children come down from school prior to that. It's a real achievement. Regional Roads Forum in Murray Bridge on the 22nd. It was more about the department's direction, in my view, in terms of roads. We are in a good position because they are funding this $5 million study of our part of the road and the Swamport Bridge and through this town of Tailem Bend. But I would say the department is quite determined, the government is to bring larger trucks onto this road. That is the brutal reality of that. And that probably focuses our mind on our 13 heavy vehicle road junctions across our district even more. The Local Government Association Conference and Annual General Meeting in Adelaide, there was only one contentious item we voted on, and that was in relation to reviewing the process of amalgamations or boundary changes, I suppose might be a better word, which was lost. Most people feel that at this stage there has not been enough time to test the process, which was only recently changed around this subject. And last Friday, the 12th, the Councillor Qualman, yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question. November the 11th, meeting with Viatura representative and the CEO, Tailem Bend, thanks.
Yeah, so finally we met with Joe Klitcher, the regional manager, and a general meet and greet, but just to seeing where their direction is, and the direction is very much around east of Adelaide. This particular site at Tailem Bend, she considers to be an inland port.
Yeah.
And the consolidation of that company in terms of grain will be brought here and then generally put on a train.
Yes.
That's the general game plan for the company. Mm-hmm. And we just had a broad discussion about their direction and how, particularly in this $5 million study by DIT, whether they can lend some support to an alternative access. That was. So you want to add anything?
So we also undertook with Jo that we would meet with her supervisors and managers in Adelaide at some stage as well, just to continue the conversation. And we were a bit cheeky in terms of asking her why they don't have an office here of any significance, that it's still at the actual facility. And so we'll continue that conversation as well.
Last Friday, the Deputy Mayor and myself and the CEO went to Narracourt on the invitation of Nick McBride to discuss, I suppose, the first year of the Fulton Hogan contract on road maintenance in east of the state. And that was also accompanied by, obviously, a road trip by the Director General of the Highways Department, or DIT, including and his senior officers, and we also had the Minister on the screen. It'd be fair to say that it rained more in the southeast than it did up here. That flushed out a lot of pothole issues and associated things. I think it would be wise for us to let the department and the contractor sort out what's in front of them. It's an 8-year contract and they're 1 year in. And I didn't feel we could add any more by complaining to the department any more than the other mayors already did. They did travel down via the Princes Highway. So they travelled the whole length of the Princes Highway, the best I could read the discussion. And I presume they come home via the inland route. But I think it was productive, and perhaps more importantly, the director of the department and his senior officers are out here driving around more than we may think. But he's like everyone, he's got a list of priorities and you can't fill all of them.
May I ask a question? Nick McBride did bring this up on Friday at Murray Bridge.
Microphone.
Be the bane of me. Nick McBride did bring this up at the meeting we attended at Murray Bridge. I'm just wondering, did he get a favourable response in terms of repairing of shoulders on Princes Highway?
I think Nick McBride is in a reasonable position to get a favourable response from the department. It appears, no disrespect to our council area, the issues are far larger, perhaps in the general row, Millicent area than any other. And it appears we travelled down to Keith and down the Riddick Highway, and there's been some substantial heavy rebuilding of that asphalting been going on, and I'd have to say that's improved the standard of that particular section immeasurably. So if the Tatiara Mayor and us felt we weren't going to get much by it. But it appears in what I call the next level down roads in the southeast, which would be Rizzy roads, there's, the wet wind has flushed them out, basically. The contractors probably didn't have enough information to make enough of a valued judgment about how to react in the first year, which seems surprising. You think the previous contractor or the department may have known, but they basically said they weren't aware of the ambit of the things around edge breaks where they've widened the road, but that's those two little bits of seal join, and also vegetation management. So I think it was a productive meeting, and particularly in the way that our staff can relate to the departmental staff is mechanical at the moment or bureaucratic as other people might use, but I think going forward, the department will consider whether there's a better way of us working with them and particularly with their contractor. And we have some contacts through our director already in that area. The last thing I might say is it slipped out in conversation, but I think they're going to set up a second patrol base at Kingston. The Mayor of Kingston wasn't aware of that, but that would probably help the Princes Highway, I'd imagine, I'm a guesser. Councillor Arthur.
Just a comment about that. I think one of the biggest problems they've talking to the Fulton Hogden man is that they didn't realise the distances, I think, when they set up. So I've set up a base in Murray Bridge and one in Narrowcourt, and there's a hell of a lot of difference in between. And they did mention that their biggest problem is the hole on the road maintenance because of the distances. And also, you know, like if you have a roo hit on the road, well, that's their job to clean up. And by the time they send someone down there to clean it up, it's already gone. So they are having a real good look at how they do that. And the inference was there in a very subtle way that maybe councils can be involved in those sort of little day-to-day jobs, and that's the way they seem to be inferring in a very subtle way.
Yeah, I think we've got some time to build on a relationship where we all can win. That was what I came out of the day with. So, yeah. It was worth going for the trip for the day. The CEO fitted in some more things, and Deputy Mayor and me inspected the dry swimming lake. So.
In my car.
With the indicator on the wrong side, of course. Okay, any other questions, councillors? Okay, I move on to Councillor Arthur. You've got a report, anything to add?
I think, well, I'll just make one comment about the lap schemes that are going on with the healthy soils and they are very, very good trials because they're not just a 12-monthly trial, they're a trial over 4 to 5 years. And to get the funding to actually be able to do it on a larger scale than just in a postage stamp in the back of a paddock is proving a great send. And talking to the guys that are going to these, and particularly the one at Kavanagh's, the last one with so there was probably 25 from Tinny that had never been to them before who turned up there, and because they were interested, it's affecting them, the rising salts in some of their ground, and the people that are running them are down to earth, and people can, you know, the old farmer, he can relate to them. And I congratulate the lap on what they've been doing there. It really is. I've never heard such praise from farmers.
Okay, thank you. There's no other questions. Councillor Bland's report, you got to add anything, Councillor?
No, I don't think so at this point.
Extensive report over many months, Councillor.
At the beginning and end of the vote.
I'm going to ask you why you can't leave that microphone down near you. Doesn't
don't want
bite
to
you.
hear.
Doesn't bite you, Councillor.
Fair enough.
Councillor Hill, anything you want to add?
Nothing to add, thank you.
But I am going to add, while I've gone Councillor Hill's report, I congratulate her on being a finalist. Where is that bit of paper? Finalist in the Murray River, I had it. Murray River Lakes, Burong Transport Award. You're a finalist in that, so I very much congratulate you for a new business, I understand.
Yeah, South Australian Tourism Award.
South Australian Tourism Award.
Thank you.
Of interest, council as part of a grouping, and it's in the information document, councillors, I won the regional award, or the state award for the region. Was CEO went to this function.
So the MRLCTA, which we're a funding partner of, which is a tourism body that's connected with the RDA in a sense, the plan for the tourism operators won the award for the best plan for South Australia, which was a great honour. And Bill Nemi is the one who was the driver of that.
We thank Bill and thank everyone for that. Nothing else, councillor? Councillor Yance, you got anything to add?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you, councillors, for that. Notice is a motion. Councillor Rountree, you're going to move that motion?
I would like to move that motion, please, Mayor,
Okay, so
around the
councillor
Canberra public toilets.
Rountree moves the motion, which is in relation to the public toilets at Canalpin. Councillor Qualman, you're the seconder, I presume? You want to speak to it, councillor?
Most of what I wanted to say is probably in the motion, except that I think there's been some talk around Canalpin that this revamp of the toilets was supposed to have been on the agenda for quite some time. I know when we first took up our position in council in 1819 that we looked at doing the septic, and that was done. It was seen as the higher priority, but there was some recent talk that apparently the whole block should have been considered in an earlier budget. I've had a look and I can't seem to find anything that that says that. So I feel it's probably not a bad idea to put this back on the agenda for consideration, and whether that's just a revamp of what's there. But I think the inclusion of the disabled toilets at some point is going to become very important. There is only one at the pool, which is obviously out of action at the moment. But I think we do need something in Canalpin for disabled people and make those toilets a bit safer. And the issue with the disabled toilets is more so if you've got a husband who needs to bring his wife to the toilet, where do they go? Does she go into the men's or does he go into the female? There needs to, and vice versa. So there just needs to be a spot where that can be dealt with properly. So, yeah, that's all I have to say on that matter.
Thank you. Councillor Qualman, you want to add?
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. I concur completely with what Councillor Rountree says, and I think this is it's got merit, this motion, that that's better. It's in a high usage zone, a prominent busy highway, and I think it would be under a lot of pressure, wear and tear, so it probably does need a bit of TLC. Thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, you'll note that the report sort of has already addressed perhaps some parts of that, and the other parts will perhaps be subject to a future discussion. Anyone else on this subject? Councillor Hill.
Yeah, question. Recollection was that at some point, I think early on, we did defer the spending on the Canalpin toilets, so it's probably good to that's come back onto the agenda. So yeah, I support the motion.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak to it or against? We'll close. Councillor Rountree.
Closed.
Thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Those against? I'm going to declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Second one, Councillor Rountree moves.
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to amend the motion
You'd like to amend it a little bit, councillor? Yes, what would that be?
to take out the words all council lagoons to just the Tail and Bend lagoon, please, in light of what the Chief Executive Officer responded with. I think it's probably more appropriate than to just say perimeter fencing around the Tail and Bend lagoon.
Not all. Yeah. Yep.
I'll ask a question.
Mr. Mayor?
So you're moving that way, councillor, with that amendment?
Yes, please, Mayor.
Is there a seconder first? Councillor Taylor is the seconder. Sorry, councillor Brown, you have a question?
Question just in clarification, and my memory may fail me, but does
The report says it does.
Sorry, I missed Councillor Bland's question.
Councillor Bland asked, does the Wellington East one have a fence? And the staff I've said the report says it does. I've now got the managers reconsidering that.
I need to confirm that. I said suitable fence.
I also think, through you, Chair, I don't think the issue of animals going into that lagoon is extensive as the one in Tailem Bend. The design of the Tailem Bend one and the relationship to the river is why there is turtles and things that try to get in there. I'm not sure if that relates similarly to Wellington East, but we'll check.
Through the mayor, the issue with the animals getting into the Tailem Bend Lagoon and not being able to escape is that it's lined with a plastic liner, whereas the earth lagoons, they can get in there
And climb
quite
out.
easily.
Does that answer your question, councillor?
Well, as I understand it, Wellington is an earth lagoon.
Yeah, it's just their natural
That's
earth.
the only
lagoon.
issue, then that's.
Certainly.
We are also in possession of 2 quotations for the installation of the fencing at the Tailem Bend Lagoon, which will action very soon. We're just waiting on the 3rd quote.
Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the chair to the Director of Roads and Infrastructure. Matt, I was under the impression that weren't some plastic ladders at work or ladders been laid in over the plastic, is that correct?
Through the mayor, that is correct. The installation of the ladders was completed. It also enables humans to get out if they do happen to fall into the lagoon and not be able to get out because of the plastic liner, which is quite slippery when wet. So they are dual purpose.
Remembering, through you, Mayor, that if people are in those lagoons, it's actually trespassing. So they are not supposed to be there.
But, well, Mr Mayor, they could be using a drone. Who knows? But yes, they shouldn't be in there, correct?
Councillor Roundtree, given the information you've received that and your motion would say it's going to be considered for inclusion next financial year, but the managers informed us that it'll most likely happen this financial year. Do you want to amend that a little bit more, or?
Yes, that's probably a good point, Mayor. If we'll change that to the 21-22 budget as well, please.
Councillor Taylor, you happy with that? As the seconder?
I am.
Yeah, so councillors, that's on the slide amendment, just to bring us fully up to date with that. Any further discussion? You'll close, councillor.
Closed.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Councillors, thank you. I'm up to 7.4 motions without notice, councillors. Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Some time ago, members, I wrote a letter to the Director of Infrastructure, probably about 2016, then about a backup letter in about 2019 about placement of an analogue clock in the chambers here at Tailem Bend. And unfortunately, nothing's materialised, even though I was assured that it was going to happen. So I'd like to move that council install an analogue clock in the chamber. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, I apologise for that. We just haven't got to it, Councillor. We have got some, as you noticed, mechanical and IT work going here. Probably rather than an analogue clock, we'll probably put a digital one and see if we can actually hook it up to the computer so they also show the same time.
Find it would be handy, Mr Mayor, because, you know, we're sometimes having to open our iPads and we're waiting to start a meeting, you're looking around and, you know, and for the gallery.
So, councillor, you want to go forward with your motion, or just leave that in the trusted hands of the staff?
Oh,
We won't forget you this time, Councillor.
I'm being reassured by the CEO they won't forget me, so I'll
take
withdraw
that.
it. Thank
Take that
you.
as you've got the information you see. I have, for everyone's benefit, in between these screens, I've got a little bedside clock. I think it's got the word snooze written on it. That's all I can read. But so that's the way I keep somewhat tabbed. I find it too hard to look at the screen and keep tabs of it. Okay, I'll just take that as you haven't gone forward with that motion, councillor. Any other motions without notice, councillors? Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Previous meeting, councillor brought up in regards councillors' reports. I'd like to move a motion to the effect that the councillors' reports as to meetings attended clearly states if they were attended via Zoom. I note that a number of the members' reports today have all indicated when they attended things via Zoom. We record this at the beginning of the meeting quite properly. And we also record it in the minutes of the meeting quite properly. So I believe it's just a cleaning up of something that would facilitate far more open.
So I'm taking it you're moving that way, Councillor.
Yes.
Just, is there a seconder to this? Councillor Lang. Just get the words.
Through you, Chair, I think Ashley might want to say something.
Yes, Ashley.
So through the chair, those requirements for your reports are included as part of the, I'm going to get this wrong, I think it's the code of practice for council meetings, proceedings. So that code of practice will probably need to be updated to reflect that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I'm able to incorporate that also be amended to catch this.
The wording would be, Councillor.
Wording would be that, as Ashley has pointed out, that the code of practice of councillors be amended so that they are to include Zoom meetings attended or identify Zoom meetings that are attended, as is done by the mayor at the beginning of the meeting and in the minutes of each of the meetings. It just tidies up loose, because some members record it without any problems and others seem to find it better not to have it.
So this is a governance issue which Ashley's identified there.
Yes.
Just straightening that up. Yes, question, Councillor.
And will that also include online education? Some of us online education, other meetings.
Sorry, I can't hear Councillor Hill.
That's not Councillor Bland.
Councillor Bland.
Isabella in front of her now. So.
I'm just wondering whether we'll capture more than ordinary meetings, in that many of us do education or other meetings on Zoom as well, unless we put it in the body of our report, which I have a tendency to do. Will it capture how else we are serving council?
Very good question, Councillor. CEO, do you want to comment on whether online training, if it's authorised or part of?
I think, through you, Mayor, this goes back to a conversation we had at a previous council meeting. If councillors want to tell us about training that they've done independently, and a couple of you already have, we will record that as relevant training in your on our spreadsheet, that we keep a track of that. If you think that it's a webinar or a Zoom, that's relevant information to a degree. With the reports, to be honest, Mayor, I'm not sure whether you need a motion for that. You could just ask councillors to actually nominate the whether it was virtual or in person for each of those activities. But
I've got a motion, so I've accepted the motion, I think, because it's been varied a bit.
I have a question, please, Mayor.
Yeah, just hang on a second. Yep, I'll just go with that motion as it reads. Councillor Roundtree.
Wondering what the motive or the reason for this is. I'm not entirely sure what we gain or don't gain. So perhaps we can a bit more explanation on why people see it's necessary. Or I think some people do. I mean, like if you don't, it's an accident, but most people put down when they attended by Zoom anyway, if we're doing Zoom calls. Just wondering what the motive is behind it. Seems a bit weird.
That, Mr. Mayor, through you. Simple, it's one word: transparency. Simple as that, nothing else.
So,
Okay.
so thank you, Councillor. I suppose from where I sit, one of the problems I have is people could be attending council meeting and I am unaware of it, because they could be watching it live, and which is quite interesting now. And I suppose I see if a councillor is attending the meeting, if they're an apology, they need to tell us they're attending the meeting, because they could be watching it all. live and still we'd be unaware of that. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. No, I can't see a reason for recording it anywhere as Zoom. The council meetings are fully recorded. They're online. There are people watching them currently. They can easily see. If someone wants to actually track down who's attending the chamber and who isn't for whatever reason, they just need to look at the recordings. They're all still available on the council YouTube website. So I don't see, I can't understand, I can't understand the reason apart from, well, I'm sorry, I just can't understand the reason for it.
Councillors, if the code of practice is to be updated, I suppose we'll have a say in it.
Yeah.
So the chances are by the time we get to do that, there will be changes and there will be an expectation that most councillors come back into the chamber based on a risk over the next couple of months.
Yes. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It is also a requirement under the Local Government Act that all reports by councillors are accurate. If they say they're at Tail and Bend, when in fact they're elsewhere via video, then the report is considered inaccurate, and it is also a code of conduct under section 63. If you want to look at legality.
Okay, Councillor Arthur.
Mr Mayor, under the Act, which was moved to allow virtual as well as video proceedings of meetings of council, it didn't say anywhere in that you had to declare whether you were there by Zoom or in person. So we can change this, and as we know, the Act may not go any further than December. So it may be changed and everybody will have to be back in the chambers again. So, I just think it's probably a little bit premature to worry about it now, because it's been in swing for, 8 months, 7 months?
Maybe. So, councillors, I'm unaware of when the emergency provisions will be lifted, and therefore when or if, I might add, or if the ongoing use of Zoom for committees or council will be allowed. So we have to await that, the CEO.
You'd expect that with the opening up of the borders and the changes that are coming thick and fast over the last week and will continue into November, December, that there'll be another change to our emergency declaration at some point. The other thing is then that based on the risk in the chamber, the mayor may decide or chat about, do we come back into the chamber and at what point?
Councillor Roundtree.
I just wanted to follow up on a statement you just made, Mayor, about the fact that we don't know who joins these meetings when we go to Zoom. I believe that we're let into these meetings by Ashley or Tech. So you would know who's watching and who's joined. I don't believe that anyone can join without the details.
My point would be, councillor, yes, I accept that, but a councillor could choose to be an apology but watch us. That's the harsh reality of going live on YouTube. A councillor could be without any influence on the meeting, attending the meeting.
Then
you would know who that is, though, through you, Mayor. You would know who that is because they'd have to join, or if they watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, but not on Zoom. Not on Zoom. They could just watch on YouTube. Councillor Taylor, quickly, I'm going to wind this up.
Through you, Mayor, but I mean, a councillor can submit an apology for a meeting because they might be lying in a hospital bed.
Absolutely.
Just because they're watching it, it doesn't mean they're any less of a councillor if they're watching it on YouTube.
No, but in terms of if they're in the chamber, we would know they're watching it, and if they're in the chamber, they have to vote or not. Under the changes, we've got two concurrent changes. One's around Zooming and another one's around us live streaming. So there's two separate issues that are operating there. I'm nearly at the end. CEO, please.
So Ash just wants to make a comment, Mayor, about what she currently does with these reports.
So my practice for your written reports is that I record the location of where the meeting has taken place. So if I am aware that you've attended via Zoom, then I'll put that you've attended via Zoom, but sometimes I miss that. So there may be some mistakes that are on my part. However, generally it either says that you've attended at Taylor Bend, for example, or that you've attended via Zoom.
There you go. Okay. You're going to wind her up, councillor, please.
Yep, very quickly, Mr Mayor. Look, it is about transparency. It is purely the fact that you announce who's here at the beginning of the meeting. The minutes written record of who attended, yes, but for it not to follow up with the members' reports where the community particularly get to have a look at these things quickly. They cast their eyes over the months of meetings attended, and the community then is able to very quickly get who is physically here and who chooses not to be. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Whether they choose not to be, they have the ability to do something different.
I would like to point of order on choose to be. I think that's actually very inflammatory language to use. We are exactly at the meeting like you are. Just because we're joining by Zoom makes us no less of a councillor, or our presence at these meetings no less important. And I think that's an inflammatory and ridiculous thing to say.
I'm going to ask the councillors to withdraw that last little word, actually choose, because it's a choice you're allowed to make, councillor. That's the point.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I'll keep it in because we choose to either do it via Zoom or not.
That's right.
It is our
Most of us have the ability, councillor. I'm not one of them. Okay. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? I'm declaring that carried. Where have I gone, Paul? With councillors, myself, councillors Yench, Bland, Hill and Lang voting for it, and councillors Arthur, Qualman, Taylor and Roundtree, thank you. Voting against it, it's carried, councillors. Right, we move on. Motions without notice.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Any more,
please?
Another one.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Put that mic up a bit higher, please.
Yeah, look, I have this one copy there, but I'll read it out.
As you know, councillor, it's all far better to put it on notice than without notice. But anyway,
Yes, but
try me.
This one is relatively short and to the point, and that is, Mr Mayor, the Coorong District Council include on the agenda for the special meeting of next week, which is the 23rd of November, a full and open discussion about the current projected risk to our communities with COVID. I appreciate that the CEO put out a very extensive document this morning, and I thank the CEO for that. But I'm also getting a lot of queries from people in the community as to what and how will council operate and what are we going to put in place. So we do need to have this, I believe, as a discussion point and a serious discussion point, not necessarily today, but at some point fairly soon.
Right, councillor. As you know, special meetings are called for very specific purposes. And as much as this may be a great interest to some people, I think it'd be far better that you put that on as a formal motion on notice for the next meeting. Because
Can I make a suggestion?
I'll ask the CEO make a suggestion.
I would suggest for you, Chair, that if the issue is of importance generally to the community, then we would invite the manager of the local health network to come and brief the chamber.
Yes.
I just reiterate two parts. I'm more than happy to have motions with notice, but without. Second thing is special meetings are called very deliberately for certain purposes, and this is in relation to adopting our financial, the completion of our financial process. That's why I think it would not be good practice to bring that into that meeting. So at this stage, I'm going to ask you to move that as a motion with notice, or which withdraw it at this stage.
Well, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to withdraw it. It's an inclusion for the special meeting, but I believe we are having a briefing prior. We are present. It can be a briefing session. Take that on board, I think. Take it on board, but Mr Mayor, we are a council that has major corridors through this district. We are a service, a communities of service to travelling public. We've had at least 5 incidents in Taylor Bend with COVID. And with the borders opening, there is a lot of people are frightened, Mr. Mayor. We need to at least be doing our part to allay that fear as much as we can. And to do that, we need to have the relevant information ourselves and have an open and frank discussion, whether it's a workshop or whether it's in a formal meeting, to some extent is irrelevant, but that conversation must happen, and it must happen relatively soon. So I'm happy to change my motion from the special meeting to a workshop to be held on the day of the special meeting.
So through you, Mayor, that would depend on the availability of the.
Absolutely. We don't do it by half. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, may I make a comment?
Certainly you can sort of ask a question as a comment,
I can
councillor.
ask a question in this case, because my understanding, A, we are at risk given just the corridors, as Councillor Ince said. B, at the end of the day, it's an LGA area that could easily get locked down. It's a very large area. If they do it, they may, you coined the phrase lately, bespoke, how that might look. However, the other thing that I think needs to be very clear is, where are you going to get your services from? If you come to Meningie with a cold or a flu and you want to see a doctor, you'll be told to go to Tailem Bend at this point in time to have a COVID test. Come back when it's negative. Now, that's happening in the city and that's going to follow through in the country, but we're going to travel 75 and 100 Ks, and we're already doing that. There will be no beds in any of our hospitals, as I understand it, for people with COVID. They will be going to centralised areas if they are unwell. The other question would be is, who is actually going to come out and look after these people, or is it a phone call and a pulse oximeter on their finger as well? Because that is exactly what's happened interstate, and we need to be fully aware of that, because these are the things that our community will have to deal with if we get an outbreak. And we, as has been said, have multiple highways.
Okay, councillor, we don't know if it's possible on the 23rd of November. That's the first point. Soon as possible, I'd prefer.
It would have to be as soon as possible, because
I'm happy for that to change to soon as possible, or soon as practicable.
Councillor Taylor, are you the seconder?
No, I'm not. I have a question. Isn't this far too premature? Well, we have to find out whether the emergency health orders will be extended first of all, and that's not until December, isn't it?
right.
Well, I don't know. The government's given no real indication of if or when they'll change.
My understanding, Mayor, is that the 23rd of November is a date in South Australia that opens up to all other state jurisdictions. Each state has different opening dates, and for Queensland, I know that it's a moving date, depending, and all of the dates are dependent on each of the jurisdictions reaching certain immunisation levels within the community.
Yeah, I'm just reading. Sorry, I'm reading the amended motion. Councillor Arthur.
Mr Mayor, in my opinion, what we're talking about here is the ability of the council to operate or the
Absolutely.
community. Could I ask that question first of all?
Initially, it is, obviously it's how the community will operate, but it is also particularly how this council will deliver to the community.
Fine. So that means it is an organisational decision, which is why we employ a CEO to run the organisational side of things. Part of it will be ratified and pushed by the health department, which it has been since day one. Council have not been able to go out on their own back and make rules and regulations regarding COVID. It has been, the rules and regulations have been made by the health department, the big three, and that's what will continue to happen. So I can't see where we are trying to take over from them. And
may I respond, Mr. Mayor?
No, not anymore. Because I'm going to search for a seconder before we do anything else. That's the trouble. I'll read the motion as I believe it is at the moment. So move Councillor Yench that Coorong District Council hold an elected members workshop as soon as possible on the current projected risks to our community as a result of COVID and how this will impact upon the operational activities of council. To be included also a clear outline of the strategies council has put in place should this event escalate and the protocols which will enable our council to effectively serve our communities. This event, what's the event, please?
The event is the COVID potential lockdown, whatever, Mr. Mayor.
As the CEO might make a comment, I will search for a second to very hard then.
So the first thing is that each lockdown is different. So local government is considered an essential service. And as you will know or remember, for all of COVID, we remained and were able to conduct our business in the community, albeit with some restrictions, single people in cars, that type of activity. The only time that we weren't able to deliver services, and this was a statewide thing, when there was a total lockdown of all people across the state. So depending on the type of lockdown, and this government has said that at this point they are not looking at lockdowns per se, that they will be bespoke in some way. Local government is an essential service. So from an organisational point of view, unless there's a specific direction that nobody is on the streets, then council can still go about their business with the appropriate precautions in place.
So I see this, that you've lost the last paragraph, the last sentence, councillor. Are you still happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Right, I look for a seconder. I'm looking for a seconder and I've got one.
Nobody can see it except you.
Nobody can see it. Councillor Lang, I'm going to take you as the seconder on this condition that I reread it.
Yep.
Because apparently no one else can read it on the screens, I'm just told.
Correct.
And that is that the Coorong District Council hold an elected members workshop as soon as possible on the current projected risk to our community as a result of COVID and how this will impact upon the operational activities of this council. That's where I'm believing the motion's at, Councillor Yench.
Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Lang is the seconder. Councillor Lang,
Correct. Yep.
you don't want to speak to it?
No, I think we really need to be looking where we're going. Is the council going to be mandating for all council staff and councillors to be vaccinated? How we're going to be handling customers coming into the front counter? Are they going to be prevented from coming in because they're not vaccinated? These are the sort of things I know are operational and the CEO's responsibility, but they're also ours, I believe, as councillors. So these things we should be talking about and not just waiting for the Health Department and the Police Commissioner to do things under the Emergency Services Act.
Okay, any further debate, councillors? Looking Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Matt. No, I'm not going to support this. This is the domain of the CEO, and the CEO will get formal advice from SA Health and SAPOL if it comes to that. It's a state government driven issue. The LGAs, perhaps has happened in other states, will be told what to do. I doubt there'll be very little input from the LGAs themselves and the councils themselves. Therefore, I'm not going to support it because it is not our domain. We can't close roads. We can't do things on the back of SA Health unless SA Health advise us to do so. And at the moment, they're just working through day to day. They've only just released their next plan. They're working through the finer details of that as they realise that some of it is perhaps unworkable. So there's no reason at all for a council at this point in time to sit and discuss things that we don't know answers to and the CEO doesn't know answers to. We take our guidance from the CEO. The CEO is on top of these matters and is advised. And should it be necessary in future, the CEO will tell us.
Thank you. Councillor Roundtree.
I won't be supporting this motion either. I agree with what Councillor Taylor just said. She was basically just said a whole heap of things I was going to say. I will just add, though, that in the community, this is a polarising issue. for a lot of people. The coercion for vaccination is an issue for people. There are many people feeling all the feels about this. And I just don't believe at this particular point in time, we need to be doing anything more than just following the advice we have to follow when given it by government. And that's about all we can do. And I just don't think we need to be putting ourselves out there at this point when it is such a polarizing and confusing and worrisome time on both sides of the argument. So I don't support this motion.
Okay, just ask the CEO to, from the operational point of view, we went through the 19th of November last year, if I can remember what date it was exactly. What changes would you make to the management of the organisation after learning what we did over that couple of days?
So that was the time when we put in place very strict guidelines around movement in cars of staff. People who could work from home did. We limited the number of people coming into the office. As you know, the desks in here were pulled apart to make sure that social distancing was in order. So generally, I think as the council on the screen have mentioned, we follow the directions of what is appropriate for both staff, and their safety is paramount. And then how do we interact with the community? And you'll see in the public contact area, as in most places, we have the Perspex now, and wearing of masks in the public contact area is still considered necessary. There's probably a conflation of a couple of issues here. The LGA and CEOs across the state have already started to talk about what is the requirements from a state perspective around the mandating of vaccination for staff. Some of you may have already seen that SA Water is mandating that all of their staff are vaccinated. It's not just in the health industries where that's occurring. So we are starting to consider those issues, what it looks like from council to council. But there will be a time where there will be expectations that come from the state about how we respond to those types of activities. And we are involved in all of those conversations, and then we will make considered judgments about what we need to do in our particular local government area. If it got to a stage where they were significant in terms of a different direction to what the state was doing, I would certainly come back into the chamber and talk to you about what was going on there. But at this stage, it's really the conversations are starting. And to be perfectly frank, there are mixed views about how this should all work. The health industry is very easy to work out because of the risks to both the individuals in the healthcare system and the workers. Not so evident in other areas. We have quite a large network of public-facing staff, even staff upstairs will come down to see people at the front counter, rates officers and so forth. Our staff in the field are continually in contact with the public. So we need to consider ourselves as a very public-facing organisation. And to that end, we have to understand the risks from an OHS perspective about if a staff was to catch COVID at work, or if a staff was to give somebody COVID in the workplace, what are our ramifications from an OHS perspective? So it's quite a complicated issue that the LGA is working through with the state, and we are working through with the LGA on where that might land over the next month or two.
Councillor Hill.
I can understand some of the fears and confusion in the community, and I think it's not a case of council saying it's not our problem, we don't want to have anything to do with it, but it may be that we do need to consider what measures or what assistance can be given to community groups and other groups that may have to deal with the more vulnerable people in the community should there be a wholesale breakout of COVID in the region. So I don't know what council can do to help facilitate anything like that, but yeah, we do need to consider that once the borders open and people do come over the border, that there could be a wholesale breakout of COVID in this region, and there will be people who will be vulnerable.
So Mayor, we would work in those instances with SA Health would already have a contingency plan in place. We would work with those relevant authorities. We would take direction from them in terms of, because as a council, we don't have healthcare facilities that some other councils do. So it is not our business as usual affair, although it is for many other councils in terms of the services that they run. So we would take direction.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listening with interest, and I look at it this way, we've been through a testing time, as like you said, back in November, and if it turns ugly again, and what the CEO has said, I think council is prepared to handle this crisis and take all the precautions and look after its staff and employees. So I think we've got it in hand and are prepared. Thank you.
Okay. I think just about every councillor has spoken. So, okay, so I'm going to close, councillor.
I will, as briefly as I can, Mr Mayor. I am aware that Mid-Murray Council are going to be doing something along these lines with their councillors and staff. Councillor Coleman, I appreciate the fact that with the information that was sent out by CEO, you stated badly written and misleading, confusing information in the community via social media. You're absolutely correct. And a meeting of this, a discussion by council of this type will help us to better alleviate those fears. There are people out there with convicting views, and it's people's right to either be vaccinated or not. I don't argue with that. But we have a right to protect the vulnerable, and our duty of care is to be as well informed as we can at every level. It's not about us coming up with our own plan. That's ridiculous. It's about all of us singing from the same hymn sheet and not playing a petty political game because we don't personally believe. If the councillors have their own opinions, that is to be respected, and that's fine. But this council needs to be clear that our first aim is our communities and our staff, and they are our priorities. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against, councillors? I'm voting against, councillors. And sorry, you can put your hands down. I'm just writing it down for purpose. I declare the motion lost, councillors. Thank you. We move on. For another half an hour, I think they want a break. Number 8 in the agenda, councillors, as best I can see, is the appointment of a deputy principal member. Councillors, where are we at? The process here, term of office. The term of office will be for 1 year until the next local government election. Title, method of appointment. Councillors, has someone got a preferred? Councillor Taylor, your hands up.
Thank you, Mayor. I will nominate Councillor Jeff Arthur.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet, councillors. Perhaps I'll just let the CEO give us a couple options here.
So with the nomination and then the voting process, last time we suggested a secret ballot, and I think you all decided to put your hands up. So first of all, I'd like to know which method of voting you would like to do so that we can then prepare for it. And then the second part is then I'll call for nominations from the floor, and then we'll vote according to how you wish to do it, whether it's by secret ballot. And for those on the video, the secret ballot, you can text me your answers. And for those in the room, you can write it on a piece of paper and put it in the blue bucket that I've got behind me.
Councillor Taylor, you've got on the point of the method.
So for the method, just a show of hands.
Should we go in order, please?
Oh,
The governance officers
wants us to go in order.
Wants us to go in order. So now I've got it on my screen. It's moved that the term of office for the position of deputy member be for 1 year, and then that's till the next local government election in 2022. Can someone just move that way, please? Councillors, I'm going to take them as councillors Roundtree and Taylor. Any discussion around that is pretty straightforward. It can't be anything else. That being the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. The second one, that the title for the deputy principal member of the council will be deputy mayor. Can someone move that way, please? Councillor Bland and Councillor Ling. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously as well. Number 3, the method of appointment. Nominations will be sought from members by the CEO. So the CEO will be the returning officer, will say somewhere here, I hope. I better read this out. If only one person is nominated, the position will be declared elected. If more than one person is nominated, then the matter will proceed to a vote. All members shall be included in the vote. The method of election will be by a show of hands. So that's what will be included in this. First past the post method of voting. The Chief Executive Officer is appointed as the returning officer for the election. At any stage in the process of an equal number of votes, the returning officer will decide the issue by the drawing of lots. The name of the candidate drawn will be one excluded from the ballot. On completion of the election, the returning officer will authorise to declare the successful candidate elected to the position of the deputy principal member. And on the declaration of the returning officer, the candidate is appointed to the position of deputy presiding member for the term of office determined by the first resolution. And since we've already passed those two, it will be deputy mayor and 1 year. Someone move, if they've got a difference, that one. Councillor Coleman, all of 3 as it reads. Yes. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hill, thank you. Any debate around that process, councillors? Being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? At that point, it's carried unanimously. Hand over to you as the returning officer, Councillor.
Okay. No councillor here, man.
No, well, see ya. Well.
So, Councillor Taylor, you will go back to where you started with your nomination.
Thank you to the CEO. Yes, I nominate Councillor Jeff Arthur. He's done a fantastic job in the last 3 years, so why not the 4th?
Thank you. Are there any other nominations from the floor?
I'd nominate Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Councillor Ling. Last final call. Any other nominations from the floor? As we have 2 nominations, we will now go to a vote, which is show of hands. Show of hands. So I'll just go in the order of the nominations then. Those who in favour of Councillor Arthur being nominated as the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Arthur, don't put your hand up yet. Please put your hands up now. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that right? So we have 7. 2 on the screen, Councillor Roundtree and Councillor Taylor. Yeah. Thank you.
I just declined.
So now I'll ask for those in favour of the nomination, Councillor Yench, please put up your hands. So Councillor Ling, Councillor Yench, you're not voting?
I voted for Councillor Arthur.
I missed that
going to
bit.
say.
Yeah, I know you did. But I'll forgive
I
you.
was just assuming you were voting for yourself. Sorry, Councillor.
Oh, no, I'm over that.
Okay, I declare that Councillor Arthur is the Deputy Mayor for the next 12 months. Congratulations, Councillor Arthur.
Thank you, councillors, and I suppose from where I sit, Councillor Arthur has been a very good deputy mayor, covering when I have been unavailable. So I thank him, and I look forward to, in the next month in particular, if we ever get to harvest and it stops raining, do some more work out. So I move on to 8 point, wherever it is. Number 2, Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group. Councillors, we had a action plan working group thing. There is a recommendation around starting this process.
I'd like to nominate.
Councillor Qualman.
Yeah, thank you.
Me mask is doing me in, councillor.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Hill, please, in the recommendation. Thank you.
So, councillors, it has been brought to my attention that
I'll
we're
second
a
that.
closed meeting. You may take the mask off if you wish,
It is a public meeting, but there are no public here.
No
If the
public
public do join us, then we will
apart
resume.
from
the mask.
Isabella, but I think she's accepting certain risks from now and right now. So I'm For the purpose of clarity, it's up to each councillor, but that's one way to do it. Councillor Qualman has moved the recommendation, including, and it reads that council appoints the mayor and Councillor Hill as the members of council's reconciliation action plan working group. Is there a seconder? Councillor Taylor, I'm going to take on that one. Thank you. Any discussion you want to lead, councillors? Anyone want to talk about it?
Just one point.
Yes.
Can I just ask one question, Mr Mayor? If one of those persons was unavailable, should we have a proxy? Thinking, sometimes one may be unavailable.
Through you, councillor. Kelly, who's running the show for this particular one, is shaking her head. It's probably, if a councillor wasn't unavailable, we would just move the meeting time slightly to accommodate as many people as possible.
All right, no worries. Yep. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Taylor, you've got your hand up.
So to speak to it, is that okay?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Through you, Mayor. So
5 minutes.
Really the principal member, absolutely. And fantastic to see something like this going through. And Councillor Hill, absolutely fantastic, ideal choice.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further debate around this recommendation, you'll close, Councillor Qualman.
I'll close the debate. Thank you.
You'll consider that done. I put the motion that the council appoints myself and Councillor Hill as the members of council's reconciliation action plan working group. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 9.1, council's policies. There's a revocation of the service range policy. I might get someone just before we move this to explain what this is, please, Miles.
Service range virtually tells what services we provide, the range of services. It is now effectively gazumped by reforms with the Local Government Act. So Local Government Act will dictate services provided by council, and hence the policy is redundant.
Councillor, so that basically the change in the Act make this one inappropriate or redundant. Is there anyone prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Bland, the way you got your finger up is like a question, though. Surprise, surprise. You're going to move the recommendation. Right. You got 5 minutes then. Where you go?
I'm just wondering through you, Mr Mayor, to Miles, as to whether or not on our website we could just place that policy has been replaced by and refer people to local government. Because if they've gone looking for the services, and some people when they move into the district do, can we just have a referral or a click on that they can get to that space? Thank you.
Absolutely. And might I also state, though, we will do some work in the new year in terms of service charters and more information on the website.
Councillor Yench, I think you were going to put your hand up as a second.
I'm happy to second.
Well, that's what I gathered. So you want to speak or you're done?
No, I'm happy to remain silent.
Right. Anyone else? We'll be closing, councillor.
I'm closed.
Thank you. I'll put the recommendation as it reads. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. We move to 10. Item 10, number 1, Pangarinda Botanic Garden Committee minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of October. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Leng is the mover. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree, I presume you're the seconder. Anyone wishes to discuss anything there? You'll notice the requests are coming out of these committees are listed elsewhere now on the agenda to be kept tabs on. There's no further debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those in favour, I'm taking Councillor Hill.
Oh, sorry.
All those against? It's carried unanimously. Number 2, Coorong District Action Plan. Minutes of the meeting on the 18th of October. The Deputy Mayor spoke about how well that's going before. Want to move that way? Thank you.
Yep.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Qualman. Is there any discussion around that one, please? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 3, Coorong Finance Committee minutes of meeting held on the 9th of November. I'll move that way, please. Councillor Hill, thank you. Councillors, find someone else. Councillor Roundtree, I'm taking on the screen. Any discussion? Being none, I put the recommendation, the motion. All those in favour? Those, Councillor Taylor, are you in favour? You are now. Thank you. Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 11, Coorong District Council Growth Strategy Update. There's a recommendation, councillors, 11.1. Councillor Bland, are you moving?
I am.
Thank you. We receive and note the report, the growth strategy update report. Councillor, I need a second. Councillor Roundtree, or is that a question?
I will second it and I have a question.
All right, your question is?
What is the cost? Do we have a costing for the URPS and Tonkin Engineering?
So through your worship, what we did is we tendered up to $50,000 and hence the cost is slightly under $50,000.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Speak for or against, discuss it, questions? Important little process. Okay, there is none. We'll close, councillor.
I'll close.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Eleven 2, Council's Assessment Panel title. And I'll read it just for everyone's benefit, that the terms of reference for the Council Assessment Panel be amended to alter the title of the Coorong District Council Assessment Panel to the Coorong Assessment Panel, and all related public information be accordingly updated. Councillor Yench, are you moving that way? Yes. Okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor, I'll take Councillor Bland because she's the first hand I saw. Any discussion? You want to lead, Councillor?
Look, I'm happy to, but it's fairly straightforward, Mr. Mayor. It will eliminate a significant amount of confusion. Community people still assume that council has far more control over these issues than it actually does. And this hopefully will go part way to meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Bland?
Same.
Any other councillors wish to discuss? Councillor Ling and then Councillor Qualman.
Only a minor point, but is there consideration of leaving district in there so that we actually define some sort of district as opposed to just a Coorong, so that we include the Mallee area as well? It's only a minor point. I agree with dropping council, and it appears other councils have done similar, but just leaving the district.
The mover and seconder, if they want to consider that. But
Mr. Mayor, I would prefer to leave it as we have moved. Thank you.
At this stage, move or won't move for you, councillor. So I'm now going to Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, I sit in on what was the assessment panel. Well, what we're going to call it, we don't know yet. But it has caused confusion, and I was confused when I was on there because Bruce, the chairperson, would often tell me to take off my badge because I kept thinking I was a councillor, but you're not a councillor.
Yeah.
You just sit there as a member on the panel, and it's very hard to distance yourself from council and then to go on to the other side. So I think by changing the name, that helps me and helps, more importantly, the community know that it is not really run by council, but it is a run by the Coorong, as in this name, assessment panel. Defines it more accurately.
Okay. Anyone else? We're closing now.
Closed.
Thank you. I put the motion, which is the recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Councillor Taylor. I'm trying to work out how you voted, sorry. Have I lost you in a technical sense?
Yeah, just getting your ears out.
I have lost Councillor Taylor. I'm still waiting her in a technical sense to get back online. You are showing me not, I cannot hear you at all, Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, it just dropped out.
It just picked up again.
Yeah, sorry.
Did you vote for or against the motion?
1 second, 1 second.
Sorry, I've got a technical issue. Which number are we on?
On number 2, the council assessment panel title, councillor. I've
Yeah.
taken the vote, but I'm sure you never heard me take it. That's why I'm asking.
No, I didn't.
Which way you would be voting? You're voting for it or against it?
For.
Right, thank you. I'm taking that to be carried unanimously, that one. Are you confident, councillor? Number 2's carried unanimously, sorry. Are you happy that you're back online, councillor?
Yes, I am back online.
Thank you. Number 3, Tintinara office hours. Councillors, there is a recommendation there. I want to move that way, please. Councillor Arthur, are you moving it as it reads?
Yes.
Right. Is there a second? Councillor Yench. Councillor Roundtree, you got a question or you just waving? Just right, thank you.
I
Is
was
there any
going to second it, but someone's
Yeah,
already done it. So I don't know.
quick of the dead, and I've got my eyes on many spots. Any discussion around the council receives and notes the report on the amended opening hours for the Tintinara office? There is none.
It has been well received by the general public in Tintinara.
The idea is apparently well received already. There you go. I put the motion. All those in favour? Now I've got Councillor Taylor again not hearing me. I can see that. But she's voting yes because I've said in favour. Those against? No, it's carried unanimously. Number 4, Coorong Finance Committee Work Program Update. The recommendation there, councillors. Don't rush me. The recommendation, councillors, number 4. Councillor Yench and Bland, I'm going to put down as a mover and seconder. Council notes the updated work program and adopts proposed Coorong Finance Committee meeting dates for the remainder of the 21-2 financial year. Is there any discussion, councillors? Councillor Arthur.
Yes, at the last Finance Committee meeting, it was brought up that it is probably imperative that we start the process for the budget well before February, as is in the program here. It was discussed that maybe the end of December was the appropriate time, and I think the CEO agreed that we didn't need to bring that forward. Is there any reason we have not included that in the works program?
So through you, Mayor, I think the conversation at that point in the Finance Committee was that given the amount of changes happening to our systems over that time, and I agree with you completely, our budget planning has to come back. It won't be this year.
The changeover
Correct.
mainly.
It's just, I think, juggling that changeover in the system and the budget planning. I would rather get the system migration out of the way first and then start the budget planning, albeit I know that it's a bit later than I would like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further debate? Okay, I'll take it that we're closing, councillor. Close. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Number 5, the statement of comprehensive income and expenditure to the 30th of September. Council will receive and note that, please, someone. Councillor Ling is the mover. Councillor Taylor will be the seconder. Want to speak to it, either of you?
No.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Close.
Thank you, councillor. I put the motion as it reads as a recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 6, community land management plan, cemeteries and surrounds. Is there a mover? Councillor Hill, you're moving that way. Thank you. There's a set. Councillor Arthur is the seconder. Is there any debate? Appears to be none. Councillor Hill closes. There you go. I put the motion. Council ratify the amended community land management plans for the cemeteries and surrounds as attached. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against, but it's carried unanimously. The last one for this round is community land management plan, Dixon Reserve, Tail and Bend. Is there a mover for that, please? Councillor Taylor and then Roundtree. I'm taking the mover and seconder. Is that right? Any discussion? Any? All right, if that's the case, you'll close, councillor. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Councillors, I think that we have a 10-minute break, please, from 4:28. Councillor Taylor, we just want to resolve. I don't know you can hear us fully.
Yes, I can hear you fully. There's no problem at all.
Sorry, I'm not sure. That's why I'm asking you sort of out of the process of the meeting. It just doesn't look like you're hearing me all the time, but you are.
Yes, I'm hearing you. No
That's all
problem.
right. Okay, thank you. So they're going to play. It's all focused. It's not something to relate. correctly, is that right? And where did Councillor Arthur
Is that
go?
it, the copy?
We're going to just talk amongst ourselves till I've got Councillors Taylor and Ling back on screen. Councillor Roundtree, are you there? Councillor Roundtree, are you on channel? Yeah, hurry up. He's making hard work of a cup of coffee.
Oh, it's disappeared. Amongst yourself.
We are waiting for you, Councillor. We're just trying to track down Councillor Roundtree. We can't, I don't think we've got her on Zoom right at the moment. Any response from Lacey? Did I say 10 minutes? Yeah, 20. Okay, I'm going to start the meeting again at 4:49, but we don't think that Councillor Roundtree is back online on Zoom yet. But need to move eventually. Councillors, number 12, infrastructure and assets. Number 1 is the Tintinara Cemetery headstone cleaning. While you do have a recommendation, I'm going to ask the director to update us with some good work some of the staff have done, finding a reduced cost at this area. So, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And through you, the Tintinara headstone cleaning process has obviously been a long-winded activity. It's a emotive problem. The headstones are of varying ages, and people have varying attachments to their headstones, which is expected. The original contractor that we were in discussions with provide us with a quotation was quite significant, which involved a process including regilding of the lettering, etc. It also resulted in us making a claim against our insurance
I
company.
can't hear any sound. Is that correct?
You should be able to hear it, Councillor.
Is it clear? Can you hear me now, Councillor Roundtree?
Looking at the other two councillors online, you're both hearing. They're both, well, one of them's indicating yes, they can hear. Yep, 2.
Yep.
Councillor Roundtree, the problem is in your system. We're going to go on with the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So on the 5th of November, the insurance company, which is the mutual liability scheme run through the local government association, denied our claim. In hindsight, it's probably a good result. We went back to the original contractor, who indicated that they were unavailable to address the issue until March next year. As a result, we started to do some more investigations and found an alternative provider we came across I guess by luck, who are able to do the work at an extremely low price compared to the original quote. As a result, we're going to engage that contractor to undertake the works as part of our operational budget rather than anything over and above or seeking a budget variation. And that work can occur in December this year. So our intent is to...
Is anybody else able to hear?
Everyone else is, councillor. That's the issue we're working on.
So the intent is that administration will engage that contractor to undertake that work in December.
So the approximate cost of that is a lot less than I think councillors, have you all received an email around this subject? Yes, so councillors have received an email in the last day or so around this. I don't think this changes if someone wants to move the recommendation, acknowledging the work up till now. The point would be that what will probably happen will be within a standard budget guideline and wouldn't need any further discussion from council.
No, I suggest, Mr Mayor, it becomes an operational cost and it's a great result. And I'm sure you'll get some accolades down our way because I've got a few whacks in the head on weekend when some people come down visiting. But as Matt said, it's been pretty emotive and it's been going since I think 2016. So looks like we've got a result and it'll be a very, very well received role.
So councillor, nonetheless, could be prudent to move the recommendation as it acknowledges the work done up till now, nothing else. So is someone prepared to do that?
I'll move that as is the motion because that obviously
I just think that would be
the system.
Because I mean it has been a long process.
Yep.
And I think as much by luck, but anyway, people out there working in the sector, we need to get to a result. So Councillor Arthur moves. Councillor Rountree, are you hearing me now?
I am now. I missed a fair bit of that conversation. I just have a couple of questions in relation to the headstone cleaning, and if I have an opportunity, I'd like to ask them.
So did you hear the part from the director around that to a degree the report is not redundant? We've got to move it to note it, but that there's a lot cheaper contractor we've found, and you might have read that email. Yes. That will be engaged within the normal processes of council. Did you hear that part?
Yes, I did hear that part. I just wanted to get a date on when we would hear from the other stonemasons rather than just saying that we're waiting for a response. Do we have a date when we can actually start to put this to bed?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. It's as early as possible. The intent is to engage them as early as tomorrow. Then they will provide us with a date, but they have indicated that the work will be done in December. I don't know the exact date, but that's the indication, December. So we'll put out a communication as soon as we know a confirmed date when they will start. The initial indication is they're likely to do the work on a Sunday and a Monday.
Thank you, and I'm happy to second that.
Right, you're seconding that, Councillor Rountree. Thank you. Any further discussion around this process? Been long, stressful. Sometimes we might get to the result we want. You're closing, councillor. Yes. Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. I'm taking that. Number 2, for the footpath expansion strategy, there's a recommendation there to note and receive the report, endorse the draft 2022 to 27 footpath network expansion strategy for public consultation, and a report be provided to council in the future at a future ordinary meeting around that. Councillor Arthur's the mover. Yep. Is there a seconder? Councillor, I'm going to take Councillor Hill because I can see her arm before your voice, councillor. Any discussion around that? It's going up for public consultation, councillors. No, there's no more discussion. You'll close, councillor. Closed. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. We move on. There's no petitions. I have no deputations. At this stage, I have no public or in written or in the chamber to ask. I'll move to item 15, the information document, councillors. Is there any questions you wish to raise out of the information document? Councillor Rountree.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on the Wellington East Reserve, can you clarify what the estimated construction cost is of approximately 200% of council budget? What does that mean exactly? And what does the subcontracting model look like?
So through you, Mayor, the tender process wasn't conclusive. We received one submission. That submission was approximately $680,000 of a $330,000 budget. So significantly higher than what our estimated construction cost was. So as a result, we have approached the market to undertake components of the project. We will then assess each individual component and make an assessment on what we can and can't deliver within the budget that we have. There is opportunities for us to go back to the funding body and seek an extension for both time and dollars. We're not expecting to get a favourable outcome with regards to the dollars, but we are with the time. So that will enable us to deliver parts of the project, and then we will need to look at future budget considerations to deliver the remaining aspects. That work is still to be concluded. And when it does, we'll provide further information regarding what components we will deliver within the budget that we have.
So you, Mayor, what we will do once Matt has finished the work around that particular piece of discussions with the contractor, we may come back with some options, remembering that we still have 750 of the third round of LRCIP available. So the recommendation to council for that at some point would have been around some roads. There's probably an opportunity for you to consider whether you want to use a part of that to do the project in full or to segment it like Matt suggested, but we haven't finished that body of work yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions in relation to that item?
Something else.
Councillor Roundtree's got a hand up, the best I can see.
Yeah, I've just got a couple more questions about the document, if I could, please.
Yeah.
With regards to Canalpin Hall, there's still items required, cover for the sinks, kitchen blind.
Canalpin Hall, I think you're saying, councillor.
That's correct.
Yeah. I thought you said pool, sorry.
Sorry, no, Canalpin Hall. Quote for blinds received 15th of September and quote and advice on lead time requested for the PVC kitchen sink cover. Any progress on that matter?
Through you, Mayor, we'll take that one on notice and get an update for you, councillor.
Thank you. The other one was regards to Pangarindo. There's a whole lot of items marked in red. What do they mean, the ones in red?
They're the new actions that have come from the most recent council, from the most recent committee reports.
Okay, thank you. On your CEO's report, please, on the 3rd of November, there was a meeting in Wellington East with yourself and Councillor Yench. Are you able to explain a bit more what that was about?
So that's the one I referred to earlier in the conversation, Councillor Roundtree, where Councillor Yench met, and I think it was the Director of Infrastructure and Roads. We met with a resident at Wellington East. They had some concerns about the fence and the gate that I alluded to, and also wanted an update on what the planned development proposals were, and that's where the caravan park proposal at some point may come, but there is no development approval in place yet or even an application. And as I said in the earlier comment, it was about the cabins as well. So it was around what was happening with that piece of land.
Thank you. Next one on the 4th of November with a discussion with Peregrine regarding the On the Run site at Canalpin.
That one didn't take place. We've deferred that. That's happening, I think, later this week now for various reasons. And the conversation is along the lines of now I know what their options are for that particular building, that they don't have any plans But I wanted to flag with them that we were doing some scoping of the streetscape. How did they want to be involved in that? And also to ask, could they also keep the site cleaner than they currently do in terms of clearing of grasses and weeds? And the Mayor and I drove past that on Friday, and it looked like even without asking that, that may have happened at some point in the last few weeks.
Thank you. On the 11th of November, you met with Tony Payson regarding mobile towers grant funding. Is there any update on if that will go ahead?
So that was it was a general meeting with Tony Payson. He asked for it. There was a couple of new grants with the with the black spot towers. He just wanted to know a little bit more about our application because he'll be back in Canberra at some point soon, and he wanted to just have the background on that. He also advised of a couple of other grants that are out there at the moment. One of them, and I'll forget the names of these, but one of them is around building resilience in communities. And we wanted to know why the Coorong District Council wasn't one of the, I think the word is prescribed councils, where you got an extra 20 points in terms of weighting. And he's going to look at that. We can still apply, but we're 20 points behind any other application that's going ahead. So we just wanted to know whether there was any wiggle room there. And there's also some pilot funding coming out. Well, it's out, but the guidelines aren't out, and it's to do further work on unsealed roads across the country. And so we're waiting for the guidelines, and then we have some roads that would be suitable for that application, and so we will submit applications for those.
Thank you. And my last one was regarding the tourism and arts chart. It's on page 24. It says SATAC Tourism Industry Development Fund, one successful project for 113,126. Do you know what that was for? There's a chart there. Yeah, and it just says if for our region there was one successful project for 113,000. I was wondering if you knew what that was for.
Kelly's just walked back in the room. I'm going to take two guesses, and I might be wrong for both of them. One of them, it could be the grant activity for the Murray Coorong Trail, but the other one is I'm thinking it could be another council area altogether, because remembering that's for the whole of the Murray River, Lakes and Coorong, which is not only our council but other councils.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, regarding the CEO's report, and the CEO's already answered the question I was going to raise for Councillor Roundtree brought up about the Canalpin on the Run old site down there. But the other one I have is November the 4th, Local Government Association COVID-19 vaccination briefing via Zoom. Please.
So that was, again, the meeting that I alluded to in the previous discussion, where the CEOs of the councils with the LGA and with South Australian Health have been already starting to discuss what are the requirements of local government in terms of vaccination, building on most states are now going down the path of how do you protect your staff from COVID? What are your responsibilities in terms of customers who may catch COVID from one of your staff, and all the ramifications about those types of activities. So that was that preliminary conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Bland.
I'd just like to make comment on the Coorong National Park and the traffic counter data. And I think the last paragraph refers to identifying key areas of use and where infrastructure might be required in the future. And I'm wondering, sorry, page 33 down the bottom, and I'm wondering with the data, and one would expect very soon that we're going to see even an increase in that happening, subject to what happens with opening the borders. But if we do see that, we're going to have more problems along the highway around our just collection of rubbish, etc. So we've obviously already identified the increase and the significant numbers of visitors to Parnka and to the Coorong National Park. Is there any way that we can remind them that maybe the rubbish is going to be an issue again, let alone toilets, etc.?
We can certainly, through you, Mayor, raise that issue again.
It's an election year, who knows?
Yeah, and it's not a issue that's isolated to our council either in the busy tourist season over Christmas. As you all remember, we put extra rubbish bins down at Salt Creek in anticipation of previous. And I don't think over the last couple of holiday seasons, now that's probably because of the lockdowns, we've had any complaints about illegal dumping in those areas. But I suspect with the borders open, that may be a different story come Christmas.
It might be a bit forethought rather than catch our tail at the end, to just be aware that with those sorts of numbers, we've had, the increase, it's likely to happen again.
Anything else, councillors? Okay, we move on. The number 16 on the agenda. There is 4 confidential items, and I'll just inform everyone that there is a 4th as a late item. Now, Ashley, what have we got here? We can deal with that one as it arrives, can't we? As a 4th item, but the councillors, you've been made aware of that late item for your emails, and just for the public's benefit, that item is around repairing Poltallic Road. But we are going to move into confidence on 4 separate items. So those watching the live stream, please be advised the meeting is about to move into confidence and the live stream will stop. For those who wish to view the end of the meeting, the video will be available on YouTube after today's meeting.